Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Gland Bodybuilding, Mountain. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about barbell versus dumbbell work and why I believe in incorporating both in my workouts. Now, if you're like me, you probably started training using a barbell in a basement, or maybe you use just a set of Weider dumbbells or one of those Weider benches with concrete weights and whatever. And you start to get your preferences in the beginning. You start to prefer certain exercises. You start to orient yourself around certain rules of weight training, and it's pretty normal for you to start to, let's just say, attach to certain exercises because you start to have a relationship with them, right? Once you've gotten results from an exercise, then you start to deify that exercise, almost like it's the almighty Lord of all muscular gains, right? So one of the big mistakes I made was I grew up with a barbell bench, right? And what I would do is always use the barbell bench. And it didn't matter if I went to a gym later on or not, the barbell bench was the lord of the gym for me, right? That was like the ideal exercise. And that was what I always had to do. And I had to strive to get stronger in that one exercise. That was my benchmark. No pun intended, but that was basically how I was measuring my results. So, of course, when I started going to a public gym, I started seeing a lot of guys use dumbbells in their training. And some of these guys had some pretty good results. So I couldn't say that dumbbells were bullshit, because some of these guys were walking around with some pretty good results and they were using dumbbells for their bench press routines and one arm rows and different stuff like that. And they were also using barbell, but dumbbells were definitely a part of their entire exercise program. So I started to incorporate some dumbbells in my pressing movements. And I started to notice that it was a much different experience. So as much as I was a semi-level master at bench presses by the time I was 18 or 19 years old, once I started doing dumbbell presses, I started to notice that there wasn't a direct correlation between the strength on the bench and the strength in dumbbells. There was a little bit of a disconnect where my dumbbell bench was much weaker in comparison to what I could do barbell-wise. And of course, then you start to ask yourself, well, why that is. Well, of course, we know as advanced lifters, or most of you guys probably know who have been training for a while, you understand that if you have two different dumbbells that are moving independent of each other, there's a little bit more stabilization going on in certain areas. And also the arc of the movement is different. So you can't really just randomly just push the triceps out and lift that dumbbell. So with a barbell, you can really cheat by using a lot of the triceps or maybe the shoulder arc or so forth. But the orchestra of collaboration between all these muscles doesn't have to be equalized like it does with the dumbbell presses. So after a while, I started to notice that dumbbell presses were a very good way of getting a good chest pump. So I do those, some workouts, and then I would do barbell, and I go back and forth, and I got better gains overall because of it. And even to this day, I notice that if I'm using barbell bench repeatedly for several months, whether it's incline, flat, and so forth, and then I do a dumbbell bench day after not doing dumbbells for a while, I definitely get sore in a different part of the chest. The chest feels more full sore all over the place, where when I'm using barbells, I don't necessarily get the same sort of experience. So there's definitely different muscle fibers that are being activated and recruited because of the different exercise and because also of the arc that's included. So because of this, I encourage you to go back and forth between dumbbells and barbell. And one of the things I've done lately is I reached out to a company called Bells of Steel, and they sent me out a pair of 120-pound dumbbells. So you see in my garage, I've always had the 100-pound dumbbells, and I'm kind of limited when I'm doing flat bench because the 100-pounders are great. But on a good day, I can get 20, 25, sometimes 30 reps with flat bench 105s. So I felt like I wanted to have a little bit of heavier weight for that. So they sent me out these dumbbells, and these dumbbells are actually really high quality. They're great. They're urethane, these ones. And as much as I'd rather have the steel ones, sometimes they didn't have steel available, but these ones actually are really good. Because once I want to do heavier weight or lower rep ranges, using the 100-pound dumbbells, there just wasn't an option. It didn't matter how creative I got with them. So at least now I have the 120s, and I did use them for some bent over rows, and that's another discussion, right? When you're doing bent over barbell rows, your arms are naturally locked into a different position than when you're doing bent over dumbbell rows. And dumbbells allow you to slide the weight up and down the sides of the legs, so you may notice you get more lat development from that. So I go back and forth with these different movements. I'm not really married to one or the other, but again, the versatility between dumbbell and barbell, I find some people may underestimate how much of a difference it can make when you use both these methods instead of just sticking to barbell all the time or just sticking to dumbbell all the time. So I noticed these dumbbells are a little bit thicker in the middle than my other dumbbells, but that works fine because it makes it easier to stabilize and so forth. And when I'm doing back training and I'm using heavier weight, I use wrist straps anyway, so a thicker bar won't necessarily kill my grip. But for those of you who like to work your grip more often when you're training, you may like the fact that these dumbbells have a little bit of a thicker knurling or whatever. So yeah, if you're looking for a set of dumbbells or exercise equipment, I'll put a link in the description, and you can use that link to get a set of dumbbells or a piece of equipment for your home gym, and a small portion of that purchase will go to supporting this channel. So thanks a lot, guys. If you guys want to support the channel and you end up buying some equipment, this is one way that you can do that. And one final thought on using dumbbells as opposed to barbell or whatever, the movement does change subtly. So say you're doing shoulder presses with barbell, you're forced to bring the bar forward or behind the neck in order to do the movement and keep your upper body in the same positioning. But with dumbbells, because you don't have a bar that would go right through your head, you can just go straight up and down with the dumbbells and do your shoulder press. So sometimes dumbbells will give you more ease of use, like a more natural way of moving, which may allow you to stimulate more muscle mass. Because it's okay to have something that's slightly awkward once in a while as an exercise, but there's definitely a point, and I've talked about this a lot on the channel, that awkward for the sake of awkward is not effective. If something's too awkward for your body, if it's feeling like you're doing yoga / CrossFit, right? You're not necessarily going to be stimulating the muscle. What you're going to be doing is stimulating some sort of weird coordination dance. In order to perform that exercise. So I find with dumbbells, in some cases, they're actually superior for freedom of movement without having to shift your upper body around. And that's why I would consider using dumbbells as well as your barbells in your training. So yeah, this is just a reminder to go back and forth and to make sure you don't forget one or the other. They're both equally effective, just in different ways. And I find you can get a great synergy if you use both or incorporate both with some of the similar exercises. So yeah, I hope this helped you out in your training. Thanks a lot for watching. If you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalgalantbodybuilding.com, and thanks to the patient supporters, and take care for now. Mountain. Natural Galant.